Hey guys, something scary is happening in Greece, in Santorini and around it. And it has reached a level where the fear amongst the residents is growing. And if you see the headlines that have been released, like Greece sends rescue teams to Santorini amid fears of big earthquake, multiple tremors near Greek island of Santorini shut down schools, and warning as Greece's top tourist island issues seismic activity alert. But where is this seismic activity coming from? Because right now we're seeing, and you see the list behind me, these large earthquakes. They keep coming, 4.8, 4.9, 4 point something, and they keep coming in such a high frequency that you can basically say it's a constant tremor that is happening there. And also some experts say they seem to be growing, so we could see the magnitude 5s very, very shortly. So where is this coming from? Is this tectonic or is this volcanic? And if you follow my channel, you have probably seen my video that I released in December last year about a surprise or hidden magma chamber that they discovered underneath the Columbo volcano. And Columbo is not far from Santorini. So where is it coming from? We need to have a look at this, because this could end up with something catastrophic. Hopefully not. If it's just tectonic, it might be the better solution than volcanic. But we have to look into this, because it doesn't help us to read all these headlines if we don't know where it's coming from, guys. So let's start with Santorini. Looks beautiful. Your vacation dreams, the white painted houses, the blue waters, Greece, Santorini, it's absolutely beautiful. But what you see there that is lurking out of the water that basically forms Santorini. Santorini is a caldera. It's a large caldera, and it's mostly submerged underwater. So you're only seeing the tops of this caldera, and it's located in the southern Aegean Sea. It's about 120 kilometers north of Crete. So you see visible above the water the circular Santorini island group that consists of Santorini, the main island, then Terazia and Aspronzini at the periphery. And then the Kameni Islands at the center. So it's a group of islands basically, but you really have to imagine the massive calderas underwater, and you only see the tips, which look like islands, but it's part of this caldera. Santorini had the last eruption in 1950, so that is not so long ago. And although it's dormant right now, it's still considered to be an active volcano. There are numerous minor and medium-sized eruptions, mainly effusive, that have built this dark colored lava shields inside the caldera. And now, after this 1950 eruption, we only see fumarolic activity, primarily inside the recently active craters. So if we had another explosive eruption at Santorini today, that could have widespread effects. So substantial ash and pumice fall, of course, but also tsunamis generated by possible sector collapses of this caldera of the island, because that usually happens. This island is built on unstable pumice deposits because it is a volcano. Oh, and interesting is Santorini is one spot where like Atlantis believers or searchers point to when they want to determine where that ancient island stood. They say that the island's pre-volcanic makeup closely resembled what Plato wrote about Atlantis. So they think there's a connection to the lost world, but it's not proven in any way. So the Columbo submarine volcano that is located just 7 kilometers northeast of Santorini has generated a very destructive tsunami in the Aegean Sea during its major explosive eruption in 1650 CE. So there's tsunami deposits documented on the coast of Santorini. So where is this rumbling coming from? So guys, you have to understand there's a volcanic arc. It's called the Hellenic Volcanic Arc. And the Santorini, it's called the Santorini Amorgos Zone, is located in the central part of this Hellenic Volcanic Arc. And there are 8 major faults, and then there's also the Columbo and the Santorini craters. So the largest earthquake, 7.1 in the southern Aegean zone during the 20th century, also occurred in this area. That was July 9th in 1956. And in 1613 BC, although earthquakes are always common in Santorini, there was a devastating earthquake that occurred in this year, and it was the reason for a massive volcanic eruption, actually one of the largest in the history of Earth. So this is what we're dealing with here. And right now we've had over 200 earthquakes, one after the other. This is massive. But remember what I told you last year. I already pointed out that something might be brewing if it's related to Columbo. There were news all over the place. Already back in 2023, hidden magma chamber reaching critical point poses a serious threat. Surprise magma chamber growing under the Mediterranean volcano Columbo. Never before seen volcanic magma chamber discovered deep under the Mediterranean Sea near Santorini. And that's the problem, because there we know something's filling up. A magma chamber is filling up. This magma chamber was previously unknown. They didn't know it was there. And then all of a sudden scientists discovered it beneath the Columbo volcano in January 2023. And that is only 4 miles, 7 kilometers away from Santorini. That magma chamber, this is what they found out. And check out my video about this where I go in more details. It's really crucial for you to know that. It's a very interesting topic. I put the link in the end screen, but also in the description of this video. So that magma chamber has been growing at a rate of about 4 million cubic meters per year since the volcano had its last eruption in 1650. And that chamber could reach, that's estimates. Scientists can't give us a complete accurate description, but they say it could reach 2 cubic kilometers, that's 0.4 cubic miles of melt volume within the next 150 years. So the presence of this magma chamber increases the chances of a future eruption, but we don't know when. I mean, if you follow my channel, we always know if there's clusters of earthquakes, a sudden earthquake swarm, something like what we are seeing in Santorini, that always puts us on high alert if it's right underneath or near a volcano, because usually volcanic eruptions come with earthquake swarms like this. So the scientists have used a technique that was called full waveform invasion to create a high resolution image of the underground rock at the Columbo volcano. And that technique basically uses artificially produced seismic wave to measure the velocity of seismic waves traveling through the ground. And they travel differently depending on what they hit or where they go through. And that's how they were able to map this magma chamber. So scientists are saying that discovery poses a serious threat, and it could lead to another eruption within the next 150 years. And 150 years, that's a time frame, but it also could happen earlier. So they're trying to have more real-time monitoring stations also on submarines, volcanoes, so that will help people to evacuate in time and stay safe. And that, again, this magma chamber was huge that they discovered. It was really, really large. So is this where the earthquakes are coming from? That is the big question. And I mean, again, we've seen it in Campi Flegrei. The earthquakes, all that rumbling, the officials were at the beginning only talking about it's a seismic crisis, it's an earthquake crisis. We need to prepare for earthquakes, for evacuation. Although we knew the epicenters of these earthquakes were right on top or around the Solfatara crater, the most active crater of the Campi Flegrei supervolcano near Naples in Italy. But then the scientists rang the warning bell and said, you can't only talk about seismic crisis, you need to talk about the potential volcanic eruption that could come with this, and you need to prepare for this. So right now the headlines that are coming from Santorini is like, that's what they're doing right now, and it's definitely the right way to do what they're doing right now. So the officials in Greece, they're sending rescue teams to Santorini because they fear that there could be another big earthquake, and you know, 5, 6, 7, that could be devastating. We've recently seen, if you check my channel, I've reported about magnitude 7 earthquakes, Taiwan, Japan, and these are nations that are highly prepared for these kinds of earthquakes with how they built. They had structures collapsed. It was really like devastating. So they have shut down schools on Santorini precautionary as a measure. They don't want so many people in one place. And also they have told people to avoid the shoreline of Santorini because of potential tsunamis. Because hundreds of seismic tremors, this is telling us something. So the Greek authorities have dispatched special forces, rescue teams. They have moved like tents to the island, drones to the island. So if something were to happen, they can send the drones up into the air. So they're really taking this serious, guys. I mean, they wouldn't do this if they weren't sure that something big could happen. They don't want to create a panic. So fears of a bigger earthquakes come also with the fear that a tsunami might happen, and that is really bad for a hotspot tourist destination. So people were advised, avoid the shoreline and derelict buildings, empty swimming pools, and refrain from gathering in large numbers in enclosed spaces. That could create panic. Spaces could collapse. So they're really trying. They're preparing the population for something big. So the Civil Protection Ministry has also said schools would be shut down as a precautionary measure on Monday. And we have to make clear, and we hear also the interview of a professor of geophysics at the Thessaloniki Aristotle University, Kostas Papadakos. He said, nothing can be ruled out. And if they say this, you really have to interpret this. I mean, they're always trying to be careful not to create any mass panics. But if he says that nothing can be ruled out, that is the tsunami risk, the earthquake risk, but also a volcanic eruption. Greece, as a country, sits on multiple fault lines, and it's often rattled by earthquakes. So this is not unusual for the population, but experts have described this increased seismic activity that we have seen basically over the time frame of 50 hours, 2 days, a little over 2 days, with more than 210 tremors registered as dramatic. They're using the word dramatic. And then on the other side, they have emphasized that the tremors had been triggered, in their opinion, by tectonic events rather than volcanic activity. But I am not so sure, guys. So Santorini is the site of the largest volcanic eruptions in recorded history, and it's also Greece's most popular Aegean island. It attracts an estimated 3.5 million tourists per year only on that island. This is massive. So today they have taken measures not only on Santorini but also on Amorgos and the nearby islands of Ios and Anafi, and they have rescue teams pitched in tents in elevated areas, tsunami, like on tennis courts, on sports courts, basketball courts, in car parking lots. In the event of a tsunami, people were told to head inland and upwards. And the ferry companies, that's also interested, said there has been an increase in foreign workers leaving the island for the port of Piraeus. Also, a UK travel advisory has referred to guidance issued by the Greek Civil Protection Ministry on the earthquakes. So the crust beneath the seas around Santorini contains many fault lines, and in 1956 the island sustained significant damage after being hit by an earthquake over magnitude 7, and that has caused a tsunami in 1956. That's in our time. There's people alive that went through this. So in light of this, the officials are even discussing further measurements. So they're discussing to bring the military to Santorini. Again, this also tells you something. We really have to say that, and this is, I mean, it's been somewhat similar, but here, this is a larger scale, but it's basically the jewel of the Greek travel industry, this area. And this has been thrown in turmoil because of what is happening right now. It's comparable in Iceland. If you watch my channel, the Blue Lagoon, it's their moneymaker. It's one of the biggest moneymakers in Iceland, and it's surrounded by volcanic eruptions. And the last volcanic eruption almost destroyed it had there not been a defense wall, but it already destroyed a parking lot. So this is bad for the country and the tourist industry, because this is such a beautiful island, stunning views, luxury resorts, booming tourism. And now there is this big uncertainty as the seismic activity increases, forcing the authorities to take this action. This is definitely hurting the tourist industry already. I mean, it is one of the most seismically active zones in Europe. That is definitely for sure. So tectonic unrest is not uncommon, but the sheer frequency of these recent earthquakes has really raised the alarm amongst the authorities, the scientists, and worldwide. They fear a devastating blow to Greece's booming tourism industry, and of course, a devastating blow to the island if something were to happen. Santorini has only 20,000 residents, and as I just said, like 3.5 million tourists come to the island each year. So the problem that I see is, there was an emergency meeting called by the authorities, and seismologists have attributed the recent earthquakes to tectonic movements rather than volcanic activity. But I'm not saying they're lying or anything. I'm just raising the question, is this really true? Because the tourism industry is so valuable for them. If they say the volcano could blow, that would really be bad. And we've seen this in Naples. They said, in 2023, we're going to raise the alert level if there's another earthquake above 4. And then there was another earthquake above 4, and they didn't raise the alert level. And then there was another one, and they still haven't raised the alert level. And then it came out. Scientists were leaking that information. They were basically saying they're worried about the tourism industry, and they're worried that home prices might collapse because Campi Flegrei, I mean, there's more than 6 million people in the direct proximity, like Naples and all these smaller towns and cities. Naples has over 3 million people. And so if you say the volcano could blow, unalive everyone in the red zones, so to speak. And guys, if you watch YouTube more often, you know why I have to say unalive and I can't say the real world, because YouTube does this, censors your video. If you say the real word, it's absolutely stupid, but that's what it is. But so they, for a very long time, were attributing the unrest at Campi Flegrei like it's just an earthquake crisis. So that's why when I hear what they're saying in Greece, I am cautiously careful. You have to make up your own mind about this. It's very well possible that it's just tectonic, don't get me wrong. But with what they have discovered at the Columbo volcano, if there's land rising underneath the sea, the magma chambers filling up, that can come with earthquakes because the crust is stretched, rocks are breaking. So they don't know enough about how this all works together so that they can be really sure. Because, while the Greek governments insist that there is no imminent volcanic threat, historical precedent is hard to ignore. The whole formation of Santorini is volcanic. It dates back to one of history's most devastating eruption, dating back nearly 3,600 years. And how this island looks, this crescent-shaped caldera, this is a haunting reminder of its explosive past, a past that continues to shape its present and quite possibly its future. And then we have Columbo, that underwater volcano. Let's go back to 1956. So reports are about magnitude 7.5, 7.1, but something like this. And that is a grim testament, guys, to the destructive nature of a potential eruption and also of the seismic events. I mean, a 7.5, that would already be catastrophic. So, and that disaster that happened in 1956 has triggered a massive 80-meter high tsunami, 80 meters high. Imagine that, guys. If we think about tsunami, we think more about Asia and what happened in 2004 in Japan, but Europe, this is Europe, 80 meters that unalived at least 53 people and injured over 100 people while collapsing a third of the island's buildings. So today's earthquakes and the earthquakes in the last 2.5 days have not reached such catastrophic proportions yet, but they're worried that they could. And already the psychological impact is undeniable, both for the locals, but also for the millions of tourists. I would not go there in the near future, definitely not. The timing of these earthquakes basically could not be worse for the travel industry because peak travel season is basically approaching, and the travel industry fears that this might prevent bookings. Yes, of course. So let's assume this has a volcanic origin. So these earthquakes that we see around Columbo and Santorini, they come so fast after each other that it's basically, if you look at the chart here, it's thick. It's basically ongoing, and this is massive, right? You can't say this is Santorini or this is only Columbo. It's basically both of them, but I'm more worried about Columbo right now. So as I said, about 7 kilometers, 4 miles from Santorini, it's like 1,640 feet, that's roughly 500 meters under the ocean's surface, is this Columbo volcano. And Columbo is one of the most active submarine volcanoes in the world. And this magma chamber that they have discovered, scientists are saying that magma chamber that is growing beneath Columbo could lead to another eruption, endangering residents and tourists on Santorini. Problem is, of course, they're monitoring undersea volcanoes like their on-land counterparts, but because undersea seismometers are challenging to install, there are fewer of them, which means scientists have less data on undersea volcanoes and might give less warning time. That's why what they did using this waveform inversion, that is really helping scientists to get a better picture of this new magma chamber that they have discovered there. And how quickly could we see an eruption? It really depends. In Iceland, if we see something like this, it's right away, half an hour or less. But in other volcanoes, it might take longer. We had a 2004 eruption in the state of Washington in the US, Mount St. Helens. It was taking a week until it was coming to an explosive event there, a week between the start of the earthquake swarm. So at Columbo, it's been rumbling for a few days at a high intensity. And plus, we know there is this magma chamber that is filling up. So maybe it has already reached the point of maximum elasticity. Is it sending magma out already? Could only be a magma intrusion. What I don't like is we don't hear too much of that in the news or from the officials. They're just talking about Tectonic Santorini, not really so much about Columbo. So is there a magma intrusion going on underneath the ocean that could lead to an eruption, or is it just an intrusion? We don't know. And, you know, as I said, let's focus on Columbo, this massive earthquake swarm. Near Columbo, how this volcano is rocked by this swarm. It has never been seen before at this volcano. And it's not only their high magnitude, but also the large number of earthquakes. Because most of the tremors, they're not in the microseismic range. They're above magnitude 3 and going in the 4s. So far, the strongest tremor that we have seen was a 4.8. And also, again, since last week, seismicity has been increasing continuously and enormous amounts of energy waves are being created and released from that. If we see these larger quakes in high magnitudes, we can be absolutely sure that there are even more in the smaller ranges below 3, 2, 1, or even less, probably thousands. So if these are volcanic earthquakes, which right now I think they are, the magmatic intrusion that might be forming there or might happening there right now could lead to an eruption. Magma is rising. If magma is rising, if magma is leaving a magma chamber, it is like a mining company. It needs to build a tunnel to get to the surface or just cause an intrusion into nearby areas. But it needs to break the rocks. It needs to build a tunnel. I always say a highway. And that's why we see tremors, because if you mine and you need explosives, you need hard machineries, you need to dig, that causes tremors. So I am worried about Columbus. I don't think we will see a Santorini eruption. I think Columbus is the guy that we need to look at, as I said in December last year. It is still very controversial what is causing these quakes. So I will stay on this for you guys as this swarm is continuing and escalating. It's a scary, scary thing that is happening there, guys. So if you're new here, subscribe to my channel to be up to date with this. And again, check out the video about the Columbo volcano in the end screen, because this is significant. This is really something that you need to know in order to further understand what is happening here at Columbo. And leave this video a like if you can, guys. And if you want to support my channel, and with my channel I'm supporting my animals, my dog's vet bills and my horses, my farm, go to my buymeacoffee.com website /silky, sign up there, follow me on that page for free. You don't have to buy me a coffee to see my posts and what I do there. But if you want to support, buy us a coffee or two or more. Thank you so much, guys. And I know you're doing this already and you're absolutely great. You're helping us so much right now. And I hope you're doing all great. And yeah, check out what's going on in Iceland as well. I've just released an update there. So it's rumbling all over the place, guys. So let's be grateful that we're still safe wherever we are, and hopefully you stay safe. Be prepared, be on alert. We need to know what's happening around us. So my heart goes out to you. See you very soon. Bye-bye, guys.